on Sunny Talkin America. And on Talkin America, we talk about anything that's happening in America in these apocalyptic times. So
I
today
know
we're
one.
gonna what?
Oh, I know one thing that happened. I'll mention the State of the Union happened this week. For the first time in my adult life, I did not watch 1 second of the State of the Union, and I don't intend to.
I did. I fell asleep.
Mm.
It was
Oh,
dumb.
that's a
It was
bad way to
really
sit. Anyways, I'll let you go. That would give me nightmares. I would not fall asleep like that.
oh that's nothing. But so yeah, State of the Union happened, and then we started talking about this, but I think last week it was more just the structure of America.
Yes.
America. And
Yeah.
and the just everything's kind of patriarchal, white supremacist. That's who our founders
And
were.
don't
And
forget capitalists. Don't forget
oh, and
capitalists.
capitalists. And this is who our founders were. And so this is who they wrote the laws for, including the Constitution. But today, I think we're going to be talking about the Bill of Rights, aren't we?
Yeah, yeah. I'm going to give a fun fact because I like these fun facts. 6% of Americans could vote when the Constitution was ratified, I believe. Right. So again, the words might be high-minded, or maybe I would say we interpret them as high-minded now. I'm not sure if we read them at the time, we would interpret them in quite the same way we interpret them now. I'm not sure we would think all men are created equal, everyone of all races. For I believe men were a certain type of person that wasn't just male at that time, right?
Right.
Is you had to own property, you had to be white, yada yada. But as these have expanded, right, the rights have expanded to more populations beyond that group. So it's interesting, right? I think this is a really great example of the dichotomy, right? Of like, okay, we had these sort of founding principles that like didn't really apply to everyone, but had the seeds of they could apply to everyone. And over time, they've applied to more and more people. But I think the fact that they started with white supremacy, patriarchy, and capitalism probably means, in my opinion, that it's never really going to come to fruition for everyone unless we change those roots. But that's just my personal opinion. Sunny, I was going to ask, how are you? What's going on with you? Are you surviving the apocalypse? Okay.
I am. You know, it's sunny and apocalyptic. It's sweet, but
Looks warm. Looks warm behind you.
it is. It is kaboom.
I moved out here to try to get away from all that.
Yeah, and stylish. I try to keep my stuff stylish. But yeah, I think with everything that's happening, we might be ahead of the curve, but there's a lot of Americans that are waking up and really understanding what is happening. And so it's a federal overreach. And then and the capitalism without morality begets this two-tiered social economic scale. Like it's billionaires and then the poor.
Turns
You
out it
know,
doesn't really work for anywhere. Yeah, yeah. Even the
no, it
people who
doesn't
make
work for anybody.
a decent amount of money feel poor in the United States of America at the moment.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's a great point. I was going to mention last time we had a conversation where I was sort of dismissing Trump voters, and you were sort of saying, how can we help these people wake up? And I was sort of saying, let them sleep. But I think I was wrong after I thought about that. So as we move forward, we could sort of talk about, how could we sort of expand the message and sort of talk to people in ways that might make them sort of see what's happening and see beyond themselves. Because as we talked about last time, in this, at least in my sympathetic mind, right, people are just lost in the sauce, right? They've just been born into capitalism, white supremacy, and misogyny, and they marinated that in their entire life. So anyways, I think that would be a great conversation moving forward. But I wanted to ask you were talking about and introducing to me some concepts that I didn't really know about. Ironically, you learned them in grad school when I was in grad school for political science, and you were just sort of around. We'll leave it at that. You were not pursuing that PhD, but you read a lot of
student.
Yeah, married to, so okay. I didn't know how much we could say.
Yeah, it's good.
Married to a fellow student at the time. Um, Yeah, I'll leave that there. But the question I wanted to ask you, and the thing that I really want to learn from you, you were talking about how the Anti-Federalists and the Federalists had these different views of human nature. For those who don't know, when the Constitution was being ratified, first of all, the Bill of Rights was not part of the original Constitution. It was added later. And so the Federalists were the group of people who really pushed the original Constitution and really wanted the Constitution as we know it. The Anti-Federalists did not really think that this Constitution was a good idea for reasons we can discuss or not discuss. But most importantly, they really wanted to have this Bill of Rights and this protection from the government. And this is actually the one place where the Anti-Federalists won this Bill of Rights that was added to the Constitution, whole cloth, a series of 10 amendments, about a year after the Constitution was originally ratified. So anyways, Tracy, could you tell us more about sort of these competing visions of humanity that the Federalists and Anti-Federalists had?
Yeah, most definitely. I feel so flattered that I get asked this question by you, a professor. But the Federalists and Anti-Federalists, so you've got the Federalists who wanted to bring the 13 colonies together, right? Under one government, we're going to go west, it's going to benefit all of us. And we got to fight, we're fighting against England at that time, right? And then others who are coming in the Americas and whatnot, and we're trying to take land. So it's let's work together. And then they came up with the Constitution, and it was like, okay, this is great, but it gives it's the federal power over the states, and the Anti-Federalists were like, I don't want to be a part of this like conglomeration of states. Yes.
Yeah, I want to pop in just to give a touch of context. So the Articles of Confederation are the governing document that is ratified right after the Revolutionary War ends, right? And the major problem with that is there was no central government and there was no executive. It just created a national legislature. Every state had one vote. You needed 9 out of 13 states to agree to change the law, right? Getting 9 out of 13 people to agree on where to go to lunch is an impossible task, right? So basically it didn't work, right? And so anyways, but they were still scared of this central power. So I'll give it back to you, but that's sort of the context here.
So that's kind of it, right? So then they do the Constitution and all of that. But then there was public debate in the newspapers across the 13 colonies, probably, went out by post or whatever. But it's essentially our founders having a debate about, do we just keep this federal power as it is, or do we put some protections of the citizens, us citizens who are the the top 9%, who Trump and his friends want to be? And they feared that somebody like Trump, these Anti-Federalists, somebody like Trump would want to be like a king again. So you've got freedom of the press, you've got freedom of speech, you've got, I can keep guns in my house because the government can't take over my home to put troops here.
That actually was not true 100% Supreme Court precedent until the 1990s, which I think is something people don't understand at all.
Wait,
there was not a right. The Supreme Court did not establish a right to have a handgun in your home for sure till like 1994. Anyways, but I digress. But yes, it has a number of rights. This is malicious, my friend. It turns out they were not, in my opinion, but I'm going to shut up about that. That's just this. But yes, we have all these. But at the same time, I would say, I tell my students, I think it's just amazing, the Second Amendment, because it's the first time in history that a government says you, regular citizen, can have this deadly tool as long as you are a law-abiding citizen who can use it properly. I personally look at this in the context of drug use because I am a proponent of psychedelic drug use, if you can't tell by the, or at least it being legal. I'm a proponent of use for myself at least, but others can make their own decision. Right, but I think that I had a mentor who when I was writing my undergraduate dissertation about marijuana legalization, said, well, what about guns? And I hated guns, so I was arguing against it. And I didn't realize he was having me make all the arguments against marijuana legalization in the form of guns, right? Because it's really pretty similar if you think about it, right? It's
Yeah.
a tool that can be used for good or for ill, right? And if you are a law-abiding citizen, you are allowed to have it. Anyways, I digress. There's all these very powerful things to protect
Yeah.
against this government, right?
Yes.
That you're talking about.
Well, right. And so yeah, so they had like they just didn't trust man.
Yeah.
I mean, when it gets down to it, it's, you know, there's a tendency to want eh, there's a tendency in some humans to just keep consuming
Man, I
and
think it's
keep
in all of us. I think it's in all of us until we realize it, right? Like you don't have
yeah,
kids. I have kids, man. These kids they'll just keep going until the kids puke, right? They learning that sometimes you got to stop. I feel like is
yeah,
something that we have to learn as we mature.
yeah, and maybe that's it, but not everybody does.
Yes, and you're right. The anti-federalists basically assumed anyone who has power is going to use it for themselves and only for themselves, and we
Correct.
need safeguards to make them use it
Yeah,
for the governed, right?
yeah. And
Yeah.
the sentiment amongst the colonies and one fun fact is like the guys that were writing the Federalist point of view paper like op-eds, they'd use their proper name, right?
Oh,
Because
interesting.
but the anti-federalists did not, so
Hmm.
they'd use like what I can recall is like Brutus.
Yep.
So and it was just showing that I don't trust my federal government.
Mm.
I'm going to use a pseudonym.
Yeah.
And just showing right there that I don't know if I have freedom of speech as a citizen under this new government.
Yeah.
Uh right? And it goes with all of them, and I forget them offhand. I think you probably know them.
That's not
Well,
my specialty. I
so
read the Federalist Papers for the history background of my
yeah,
dissertation, but that is, I mean, I tell students all the time, I'm a political scientist, not a historian, right? Like I think I know a lot about what's going on right now. I came to it because from the time I was 5 years old, I liked reading the newspaper. I don't like reading the newspaper
hey,
anymore, but for a long time ago, I did, and I did for a very long time until Donald Trump became the president of the United States of America. You know, but yeah, they had these debates, and I think that sort of segues us to our next question, right?
yes,
About the Bill of Rights and how it's in practice today,
yeah,
because like I saw recently, they tried to spin a Facebook post or something. Like they're like the administration seems to amongst many other violations of the Bill of Rights, which we could talk about in a moment, they seem to be even going so far as to asking for people's Facebook posts, right? And like
yes.
one would think that. So let me explain freedom of speech, and then maybe you can ask a
And
question
let's
about the
do
Bill of
that.
Rights.
I
So
love
freedom
it.
of speech, what I always tell students, freedom of speech means the government can't arrest you for your speech. It doesn't mean I can't think you're an asshole for what you said, right? Or I can't not patronize your business or patronize your business more or not be your friend or be, like all those individual things. Like I always use Chick-fil-A. If you remember about a decade ago, the guy from Chick-fil-A said he didn't believe in gay marriage. It's actually further than that. Chick-fil-A gives money to there's countries in the world that still like kill gay people, right? Chick-fil-A gives money to those people to continue those laws, right? It's more than just gay marriage in the United States. But anyways, the point is people who like think that gay people should be allowed to live and marry decided to boycott Chick-fil-A for a little bit. Then you have this backlash. That's his freedom of speech. That's his freedom of speech. I'm gonna go eat me 10 chicken sandwiches and sing God Bless America in the Chick-fil-A, and I can show you videos of people doing that. It's
Yeah.
insanity, right? Um, and but that's not freedom of speech, man. If you say
No.
some dumb, bigoted stuff and I decide to not buy your chicken sandwiches anymore, that's the free market, baby. That's capitalism at work, my friend. That's supply and
Boycott.
demand. That's Adam Smith. That's the invisible hand, right? Like,
Yep.
but If the government came and arrested him, that would be a violation of the First Amendment, right? And so that's what is concerning here. I post nonsense on Facebook all the time. If you want to think I'm an idiot, if you want to think I'm a jerk, if you want to think I'm wrong, that's your right. God bless you. I hope it makes you feel better about yourself, right? But the government can't look at those posts and start arresting me, an American citizen, for them. And that is what the Trump administration is apparently doing in one of many disconcerting things. And I'll just say this before I pass it back to you. The thing that troubles me so much is I thought that these were American values, right? I thought all of us would disagree. And it seems, at least for the Trump people, it seems like, no, they're my values, right? I should be able to say whatever dumb, bigoted thing I want. But if you criticize my dear leader, Orange King, you're going to go to jail, my friend. And like, no, that's not the way it works, right?
No.
Anyways, I'll pass it back to you about the Bill of Rights here.
Yeah, no, just speaking of that, I don't think a lot of people have the proper education that we got, and civics wasn't pushed, and they grew up in households full of hate, and they don't, and the last 20 years have been nothing but chaos and hate, and
Yeah,
25 since 2000, yeah, one.
Well, it cannot even be hate too, right? Like, I think that people people are have been given this programming.
Yeah.
But people don't question their programming, right? Like, I'll give you an example. What was the last horrific school shooting in the United States of America? It's tough to keep them all straight. I don't know. After whatever the last horrific school shooting in the United States of America was, I was like, come on.
It always happens.
Yeah, I was like, this is enough. We got to and again, I don't want to take away the guns. I just said that the Second Amendment, I think but I think some reasonable limits, right? Like, I'm probably going to go buy some cannabis today. I am going to be limited in what amount of cannabis I can buy. They're going to put my name on it. They're going to scan it in that I bought it. They're going to scan my license. They're going everybody in the state of Maryland, whatever board that is, they're going to know everything about my cannabis purchases, blah, blah, blah. That's more than anybody does for guns, right? Like, why am I doing more to purchase a substance that makes me mildly intoxicated and has killed 0 people in human history than we are for a deadly weapon, right? And it's like, you can have the guns, right? Just do a couple steps. But my point is, a person responded, and I'll try to keep it anonymous, criminals don't follow laws or whatever. And that's all they said, right? And so to me, the gun debate is this very complex, many different things. I'm thinking about stuff like that all the time, trying to think about, that person's point too, right? But that person's not considering my point. That person's not considering anything other than I've been given one line, criminals don't follow the law. And now anytime children are gunned down at school, I'm just going to shrug my shoulders and say, well, we can't do anything about it because criminals don't follow the law. And I think there's so much like that, right? Like, someone told him when he was 5, the criminals don't follow the laws and we should have as many guns, and that's an article of faith that has never been questioned for decades and decades of life. And I think a lot of it is like that, right? That's not a bad person. I don't think that person necessarily grew up in a home full of hate, but that person has been programmed. They've accepted that programming. They've never questioned that programming, and they will die with that programming, I believe. And just to stop my rant, what a sad way to live a human life, in my personal opinion.
Right. Well, that goes. What do you think is the most important Bill of Rights then?
So I asked this question. You're stumping me. I told you beforehand. I asked my students this. I used to joke, but we don't need to worry about the Third Amendment because it says no quartering of soldiers, which means the government forcing you to house and feed soldiers. Man, I'm not sure about that anymore. This guy in charge. I think amendments 4 through 6 are very, very important. And that those are all the ones that give us a fair trial, right? And so, if you look at the Constitution, a couple things stick out to me if I read it. So first of all, I'd encourage everyone to read the Constitution at least once, because first of all, then you'll have read the Constitution one more time than the President of the United States of America. So good on you. You'll have done that. But see what you think. What sticks out to me is they really didn't want religion involved. That's specifically mentioned a bunch of times. Yeah. Another thing is they wanted to make it really hard to change things, to pass bills, to change policies, sort of to put obstacles up to what we're seeing right now, in my opinion. Yep. And then the third is they really didn't want innocent people to go to jail, right? So there's all these protections, the most famous obviously is the Fifth Amendment. You can't incriminate yourself. But like search and seizure, right? My dad is an attorney, and growing up, I was a hippie kid. I'm still a hippie kid. I just don't have the big hair and beard anymore. But he was like, Pat, I know you would never have anything illegal in your car. Wink, wink, wink. But if you ever did, even if you don't, he would say, never consent to a search. He said, never ever consent to a search, right? You have the right to say no to a search. The police officer says, can I look around the car? A lot of people, oh, sure, blah, blah, blah. Well, my dad told me, even if you don't have anything in there, could be planted, could be blah. He said, as an attorney, if you just say no, 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 even if they search it, that gives an attorney something to work with, right? So we have, that's in the Fourth Amendment. And I've been pulled over before, and I've just said, can I go on my way? Can I go on my way? Turns out they let you go on your way because they have to, right?
Yeah.
And obviously police don't always follow what they have to do.
No.
But I think those are, so that's the important part of like, you can't just have law enforcement officers harassing you and searching you and doing whatever they want all the time, right? So that's an important protection in the Fourth Amendment. And then the Fifth and Sixth is, okay, if you are charged with a crime, you have a right to a trial by jury. You have a right to a defense attorney. You have a right to non-incriminate yourself. You have a right to present witnesses in your defense and cross-examination, right? All of that doesn't exist because like people thought it'd be nice for the defendants, right? All that exists because 260 years ago, people realized, hey, seems like all these people, when they get power, abuse it. Maybe we should put in some protections to keep that from happening. And that's what you're seeing now. And so, I really think those protections are important. Obviously, the First Amendment protections are very important because they're really, I think, what make us feel free and what allow us to progress, right? Like if we could not have this podcast right now, if we could not question, if we could not post videos, if we could not be there, right? Like we just live in darkness, right? So I think that all those are obviously very important as well. And then I'll ask you, I don't know if you want to talk about which are most important or which maybe you perceive as sort of most imperiled in this moment.
I think I'm pretty sure he's broken all of them. and it would be a fun exercise to go through each one, like 0.8 cases.
My brother has that actually. My brother made a list before the second term, and it's just like 15 markers of like we're going to hell or whatever, and probably authority, and it's just like he's like done all of them already. You know what I mean? But it was just like objectively beforehand. Like, let's just name terrible things. And again, if we go back to what we talked about at the beginning, that from the Federalist and Anti-Federalist debate until Donald Trump came down that escalator, most Americans seem to think that these things were wrong. But now, like, he's done all of them because a third of the country blindly follows him wherever you go.
Yeah. One thing I keep thinking of those times, like 200, 300 years ago, is that it was run by this like elite men who own property, other people beat their wives, beat their kids, did everything like that.
Own slaves. You forgot own slaves.
I thought I said that.
Oh, maybe you said it.
I said
own people. Sorry. Yes, own people. Own people. You got it.
Slaves, right? Yep. And they got away with it because it was all behind closed doors, right? And then out in the tavern or whatever, they behave like gentlemen amongst each other. Or at least that was the record. And that was assumed as well. So like Trump, and it goes back to bad behavior. These are rules. And you put down rules for bad behavior to prevent it, right? And then to correct it is because, psychology.
Well, the American people aren't enforcing those rules is the problem, right? The problem is
not.
The problem is we need to enforce those rules, right? Like I don't understand the thing that blows. So there's a lot of things that blow my mind, but so after January 6th, right? So again, I'll go back to I've been teaching students for 20 years that the peaceful transfer of power is a bedrock of American democracy and is an innovation that all Americans should be proud of, right? Before the Constitution was adopted, for power to go from one group to another, people's heads got cut off. There was violence, there was everything. The Constitution and this election system is the first time in world history where we figure out a way to pass power between competing groups without people's heads getting cut off. The peaceful transfer of power existed for 250 years through the Civil War, even until Donald Trump and his friends attacked the United States Capitol on January 6, 2021. I do not understand how any American can watch a group of people wearing Trump hats, Trump shirts, waving Trump flags, violently attacking the United States Capitol, killing police officers, and excuse it and say that's okay. Like, that's the most un-American thing I've ever seen in my entire life. I promise you, if Barack Obama or Joe Biden or anybody did that, I wouldn't support him anymore. I promise. I 100%. So that's insane to me. But then we can go back to COVID. COVID is the biggest crisis in our lifetimes, other than 9/11. I would argue bigger, but that's just my opinion. This guy completely screwed the pooch. The time when you need a president to respond to a crisis, 9/11's worth of people were dying every day because this guy just, didn't take it seriously, did display the anti of leadership. And then you're going to
I can't believe I'm going to say this. Because
I can't wait. I can't wait. I can't wait to hear this.
And I have no proof, but it's like 9/11 was at least used as a psyop on us. COVID was at least used as a psyop. COVID just kind of poof at the end of 2019, hence COVID-19. I was all about that because I was running
I'm sure you were
marketing agency, and I lost all my business.
Oh no.
Oh, it's fine. It's fine. I'm here now. But Epstein died in his cell that summer.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
And Trump was still president.
Yeah, in 2020?
2019.
Yeah, no, see, this is the tough part when you start talking about this. Pre all these Epstein files, right? It was real easy to be like, oh, this is probably conspiracy stuff. And now you're like, oh, no, there's the pictures of them raping kids. Okay, I mean, they're not in the act, right? But, like, I'm pretty sure when you see Prince Andrew and a teenage child there, I'm pretty sure we know what happened next.
And read so much. I did find a email today from George Bush and Eddie Trump, who is Fred Trump Jr.'s kid.
Ugh.
I don't know. It's very strange. But he's not a gentleman. He doesn't abide by the law. He never has abided by the law. He's always been a criminal. He's always been a con man. He's always been the snake. I mean, whatever term you want to use. But like, I've studied a lot of religion and whatnot, and I grew up in the church. They come up with laws, and they're all about the same. Don't kill. Don't do this, don't do that. We protect people this way, this way, this way. He breaks every fucking rule.
Yeah, well, but that's why supremacy and capitalism and patriarchy, right? The laws are for us, right? The laws aren't for them. That's part of the whole that's part of the whole thing, right? Like, just like the slave master didn't have to behave, wasn't held to the same, code of ethics and virtue that the slave was held to, right? Like, the rules are, that's part of power, right? That's where, like, the rules.
What about the Bill of Rights?
I don't know. We're getting far afield now. We'll have to come back and wrap it up next time. I know we both have things to do today. But this was great. I think we got a conversation we don't have to edit so much, so people can understand the whole thing. It's always lovely to see you, and I look forward to seeing you next week.
It's awesome, Patrick. Have a great one.
You too.
Okay, bye.
Bye.